Welcome to the Small Lake City podcast. I'm your host, Eric Nilsson, and happy December. I hope everybody's having a great holiday season, lots of holiday parties, lots of people in town, lots of fun, merry and cheer spirits. Speaking of merry and cheer spirits, thank you to everybody who participated in the giveaway. That is now wrapped up. So grateful for everybody's participation and grateful that we could have made it to 10 episodes. But even better news, we're making it to at least 11 episodes. Our guest today is Ashley Atkinson, director of the Perpetual Housing Fund in Salt Lake. And the Perpetual Housing Fund is an entity that is trying to help some of the most vulnerable people in Salt Lake, the lowest income earners, find affordable housing, but also have created this vehicle to help them gain equity as they're renting in this low-income housing to help them during and after as well. So a lot of really good info from her, but Ashley is also an amazing individual, someone who's very active in the community, someone who, went to the University of Utah for her undergrad and grad school in the MRed. Turns out she took a class, both her and her husband, from my step-uncle. Fun fact, also spent her early childhood up in Oakley, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world, even though I've never been to the Oakley rodeo. I'm sorry, I know I will go next year. Hold me accountable to it. But yeah, let's hear from Ashley. Great story, great cause that's going into the community and is going to benefit so many people. But yeah, let's hear her story and hear all the cool stuff that she's doing at the Perpetual Housing Fund. So let's hear from her.
This looks pretty fancy.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny because I feel like there's 100% hit rate on people showing up and being like, well, that's confusing, or like, that's a lot. And that was a solid 2 hours on like YouTube together. Man, Ashley Atkinson. So excited today because it's so fun, like in the conversations I've been able to have, especially with people who are very involved in their various lanes around the city, that I kind of am putting together this like picture, like hypothesis in my head of kind of like key themes that Salt Lake needs to either be the city it needs to be or grow into the city that it can be. And one of them, you know it better than I do over the past 2-3 years, that housing has gone from like, hey, the cost of living is pretty reasonable in Utah to, hey, cost of living is pretty ridiculous in Utah, faster than it's ever happened in history, in a lot of places. So I'm so curious to get your perspective on all that, and especially talk about the Perpetual Housing Fund and how it's opening opportunities for our less represented and lower income populations. But before we get into it, I want to learn, more about yourself and how you got into these great projects and great companies you're working with. So are you born and raised in Salt Lake, or where are you from?
I was raised in Oakley, Utah.
I love Oakley, Utah. Yeah. I lived in Oakley, Utah for a solid 4 months.
You did? When?
Last October to January.
Oh, where? Like up Weaver Canyon Road?
No, not quite there. So I can't think of the road right now. But so there's like the Oakley Boys School. Or it's not that anymore, but it was.
The private school.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then, so if there's that road that goes up and then kind of takes that loop down.
Weaver Canyon Road.
Is that like, it's not like the Canyon Road, but it's like an offshoot from it.
Oh, New Lane. Is it New?
I think so.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, around there. And there's like this almost 100-acre ranch I lived on for like 4 months, because last year I lived in a van traveling for 6 months, then came back and didn't have a place to stay, so stayed there.
And the van?
No, there was a kind of like caretaker house.
Okay.
That I stayed in.
So did you spend a lot of time in in the mountains and the area?
It was such a weird time. So when I was pulling up from the van trip, it started to snow. Like flakes were coming down. I was like, oh, that's so cool. It never stopped.
It's not the most fun time there. Unless you're like a snowmobiler, the summers in Oakley are just magical.
Totally.
Especially when you're a kid.
But I will tell you the most terrifying thing about winters in Oakley. So I have 2 dogs, and so naturally they'd be assholes and need to go out in the middle of the night, and they'd always want to eat all the horse shit, but that's a whole nother story. But I was out there and I'm just like half awake, and I just hear this scream of a call. And I'm like, what is that thing? That sounds like a monster. And I kind of like, I was like, wait a minute, is that an elk? And so I literally go inside, go on my phone. I'm like, what does an elk call sound like? And it was the exact same thing. And if you're listening, like look it up. It's terrifying if you just hear it out of the blue. They like in the YouTube video I saw, it's like compares to like a Morgul cry from Lord of the Rings. It's so terrifying. But yeah, so I was up there for a while. It was super fun. It's such a picturesque place to be in the winter. It's so fun to be, because like that's being from Salt Lake, you don't see elk that much. But when you go to Oakley, it's all elk everywhere and these huge herds. And so it's so pretty.
Yeah. I mean, deer in your yard every day.
Yeah. So it's super fun to have that experience. Cause like Salt Lake City boy through and through. And I'm like, okay, so I got to go like muck these stalls and play horses.
Did you make it to the Oakley Rodeo?
I did not. I've actually, ironically enough, I've never been to the Oakley Rodeo. And I think that's like one of the most Salt Lake things that I've never done.
Yeah, you've got to sometime go to the Oakley Rodeo.
Were you in the Oakley Rodeo?
I don't know that I was ever in the Oakley Rodeo. I don't think so, no.
So what was your family doing in Oakley? Or
so my dad's grandparents had a dairy farm there, like 100-acre dairy farm. Then my dad ended up inheriting part of the property there. And we had a little ranch. I grew up until I was about 8 in Salt Lake.
Okay.
And then we moved up there when I was 8, and I loved living up there. I mean, when you're a kid, you're like out on the ATV all night on the up in the mountains riding horses. I mean, it's a whole different world than now. I imagine my kids growing up and I'm like, what are they going to do all the time?
Yeah, it's like they don't have all of this land and toys and freedom.
Exactly. So yeah, we had a little ranch. We had cows every summer. We had horses. We had market lambs in the summer. So every summer we would be walking the lambs down the street because you have to exercise the lambs so that they're ready for market. And tourists would come and take pictures and videos. I was horrified at the time. Now it's hilarious. But yeah, it is definitely a different experience than growing up in Salt Lake City.
Totally. Like when I was there, the person who I was living with kids, same thing you were talking about. They'd be going up and down the driveway on their 4-wheelers, 22, this such a typical rural Utah upbringing. But then also so good to have the exposure to the work of the farm and just kind of understanding how it all gets put together. And if no one does anything, then nothing gets done.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful area, but I don't know. I would love my husband's actually from Alaska, and he had a very similar childhood. And we've talked about that a lot. How are we going to give our kids the same experiences that we had?
Totally. So how did you meet your husband?
At the University of Utah.
Okay. Yeah. So you went to a good school. That's always great.
Yes, I love the U. Go Utes.
Oh, always. What did you study at the U?
I studied finance undergrad, and then I did the MROD program a few years ago.
Oh, did you ever have Professor Cannon?
Cannon.
Tall, big nose. I hope he doesn't listen to this. That's how. So my stepdad, that's his brother.
It sounds so familiar. What did he teach?
Oh shoot. No, I can't even think of his first name. I think it's Kent Cannon. I think it's Kent.
Kent Cannon, yes. He was fantastic. He did project consulting. He actually did project consulting with my husband, too. My husband did the Masters of Science of Finance when I was doing the MRAD. So Kent Cannon actually was teaching both of us at the same time. He's fantastic.
Yeah, that is my step uncle.
Okay.
Great guy.
Yeah, such a good guy.
And it was so fun because he started teaching there when I think I was a junior or senior. So I'd see him hey, hi, as close as one can be with a step uncle, but it was still fun to see, super great guy, salt of the earth. That's so funny that both of you had him there.
Yeah. He was so fun. The class that he taught was a project consulting class, and we were actually assigned to do a master plan for the parking lot underneath Rice Eccles Stadium to expand the stadium and possibly do housing and a hotel. It was really fun. It was an interesting project. It'll be interesting to see going into the Big 12 what they end up doing with that land.
It's true. That'd be a huge, yeah. I mean, we need parking, but also it's a lot. That's a big project right there.
Yeah.
So did you meet your husband in my step uncle's class, or how did you two?
We were already married at the time.
Ah, dang. Yeah. So you guys go to the U, you do your undergrad in finance, do the MRed. What happened after school? Did you jump right into real estate, or?
Yes. So I did undergrad finance. I thought I was going to be going into. I thought I wanted to go to Wall Street. That's probably very cliche.
I was a finance major too.
Okay,
I had the same dreams and aspirations.
Yeah. So student investment fund, that's your next step is you're going to move to New York and you're going to be an intern and work 100 hours a week. I don't know why that was so glamorous at the time. Now I look back and I'm like, I don't know that I would have thrived in that environment. But at the time I was like, this is for me. This is like my next
I have
step.
to do this. My whole personality is riding on this.
Exactly. So funny. Anyway, I didn't end up doing that. I had a job at a local community bank through
cool.
school, and I ended up staying there. So I was doing like construction, finance, like lending and commercial real estate lending, and business development. So I was out working with developers on like the financing side of their deals.
Cool.
And I was like, I loved watching the projects come to life, and I was like, I need to be doing this. Like, I don't want to just sit in the office and do the finance part of this. Yeah. So I ended up going to work for one of my clients. I like begged, and I was probably 25, 24 at the time, and I was like, you need me to come work for you. Like, this is my calling.
If it works, it works. Yeah.
And so finally I made the switch, and they did mostly hospitality and commercial development. Mm-hmm. So my first projects were a Hyatt hotel, a Marriott hotel, and a office building out in South Jordan. And at the same time that I switched over to there, I started the MRED program too.
Cool.
So it was perfect, like learning in the real world and also learning in the MRED program at the same time. And then in the middle of the MRED program, I was everything in the MRED program was very housing focused. It was when housing started becoming like the center
like
of
single
issues
family,
here.
Multifamily, every family, or
No, mostly multifamily,
Got it.
especially urban.
Well, because like it's so interesting because I don't know why I remember this so well, but I remember I was in a class at the U and the professor said, raise your hand if you've ever lived in a multifamily apartment. And I mean, Utah commuter school, maybe 10% of hands went up. And he's like, if we were anywhere else in the country, 50 to 75% of your hands would go up. And so, I mean, and it's probably partially because of this, but like Salt Lake has never been that dense. And so it's funny how over these past like 10 years, probably stretching it, but like 5 to 10 years, like all of a sudden we see these apartments come up, like building, and it's like this density is finally starting to be there. I do want to see all of the models because there's a lot of units everywhere, but I mean, people are investing millions of dollars into it, but it's something that needs to happen in order for us to, I mean, continually to grow and become the city we want to be.
Yep. Definitely. So anyway, that multifamily was a big focus because a lot of developers were getting into it at the time. It was like the beginning of needing to find those solutions for Utah. So anyway, I really wanted to do multifamily development because I lived in Sugar House in a new project at the time, and I was like, rent is so expensive. Which is funny, like looking back now, it was not that expensive comparatively, but it was expensive at the time. Like it was when it started shooting up, and I was like, these projects are just built by people that are never going to live here. Like they don't know what we need. And at the same time, I was reading Steve Jobs' biography, and
great book,
so good. It was the part about the iPod that kept sticking out to me, where he was like, I think it was Microsoft. They were competing against them to get the first iteration of an iPod type device out, and and Steve Jobs was like, the reason that we won the fight is because we built this for ourselves. Like us and our friends, we loved music. We were like music geeks, and we weren't just building this because the market told us to or because it was going to make us money. Like this iPod, we were going to use ourselves. And I was like, that's how we should be looking at housing, not just like putting a bunch of buildings up and renting them to people. So anyway, I was like dead set on doing a multifamily project. So I found this project in Sugar House. It was a fallout shelter in do you know the Greystone condo? It's like,
is it the ones over by like 24-hour fitness? Like just south of those where they used to be?
No, it's actually like Brickyard, but below Beans and Brews.
Oh, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It was actually one of the first I think it's the first condo project in Utah, or maybe even, I don't know. It was one of the very first condo projects. Anyway, it was built in the 60s, and the fallout shelter was an amenity to the project because of like the Cuban Missile Crisis that was going on.
Very relevant at the time. Not so much now. Well, who knows?
Yeah. And in the CCNRs, it actually calls it the fallout shelter, like as an amenity for this. And then it was ended up used for several different things. And the top part of it was, it still is. It's like commercial office, like classy commercial office. But the bottom at the time was like nothing, just like this concrete bunker, and like some cars would park in it sometimes. And they put it on the market, and I was like, this is it. This is my project. Like, we're going to put housing in here. So I chased the project down. I convinced my boss, like, we need to do this project. We couldn't get it for the price we wanted, but I was like, one day this is going to work out. I went and talked to the planning department at Salt Lake City, and the building was a non-conforming use. And so what that meant is that the whole building was on, because it was commercial use and it was in a residential zone.
Yeah.
And the building was on like 1.1 acres, which let us have like 14 or 15 units on that acreage. And because half of the building was commercial, they let us put all of the apartments in just half of the building. So it actually let us do like micro studio units, which never would have been allowed there at the time. Maybe still wouldn't be allowed there. So anyway, we ended up finally getting this project, and we converted it to these cool little micro units. They were like 450 square feet, which like five years ago when it was completed, like there wasn't anything really like that around here. And there were no subsidies. They were market rate, but we were renting them for almost $200 less than everything in Sugar House. And they were brand new.
Cool.
So anyway, that was a really fun project. That was like my first like entrance into multifamily. And still one of my favorite projects I've ever done.
I'm sure it's so fun to go like, you're doing this other job of like all the financing, and you're like, hey, this looks like I want to do this. Like, because I think we all inherently as humans like have a desire to like create something.
Exactly.
And so like seeing that, being like, hey, like I have an idea, I want to do this. Hey, give me a job so I can do this. And he's like, okay, well, go learn how to do it. You're like, okay, well, I want to do it here. He's like, well, we can't get it for the price. You're like, well, I want it anyway. And it worked. And it like, and it's such like a fun, unique project where you're going to have these like micro units, which I mean, I'm sure like there's themes of it that eventually kind of brought you to the Perpetual Housing Fund and like wanting to have that lower income solution there. But I mean, from that project, I mean, what went on from there? I mean, was it just more of the same of that, or what kind of draw you to the Perpetual Housing Fund, or how'd you get introduced there?
So my next project was in Holiday. We did a 20-unit townhome project right in Holiday Village. And at the time, we pro forma those to be like $400,000 townhomes, which in Holiday 2000, it was right before COVID. Like, me and all my friends were going to go buy one. I was like, this is fantastic. And I picked out every single finish on that project. I did everything on that project. And I live there actually now, but
well, I thought there was going to be a sad ending of like, I was going to live there and then it was too much and I couldn't.
Well, I got to live there because I developed it. My whole purpose of getting into the residential development was to help people get a leg up and get into housing, and that there was something wrong with how housing was built at the time, you know? And so then having this project that was meant for like 20 something young families to be able to get into a home, like a smaller home, that's not who ended up being there. It was people that were downsizing or having a second home. So I think that like after like the project ended up beautiful, they're really cool. But I never had the same feeling as I had in that first project. And unfortunately, like the projects I did after that were very similar just because that's where the market was at, like the higher end in Holiday, or we had a project out in South Jordan. Like things were just going.
Yeah, I feel like a lot were going that way. Because like so I live in like Yellcrest area, and like even like the ones across from like Westminster they put in on the 13th, the one they put around from I want to say like Hobbit Park, but like around there, like it's become it's so interesting because it's either these multi-family like huge things or like townhomes. There is no like I selfishly want people to build all these condo buildings. So I'd be like, please just let me have a condo for once, because all of them are old. A lot of them don't allow pets, and it's just very archaic. But it's so funny how it's like that or that, no in between.
Exactly. And in the last few years, that's exactly what's happened, unfortunately. So yeah, Chris Parker reached out to me. He's my partner on Perpetual Housing Fund. He reached out to me probably a year and a half ago now. And he was like, I have this idea. I want to set up this development company. It's going to be a nonprofit. This is what it's going to be. And it was like perfect timing for me because the market was going crazy. We were selling all of these like multi-million-dollar homes in various areas. And I was like, I mean, I love development. I love like creating things like we just talked about. But it just didn't feel like that's what I was going to do forever. I was like, this isn't like, to what end, you know?
Well, it sounds like you had this, this project hypothesis, this, the place in Brickyard, you're like, wow, this kind of gave me this feeling like this is kind of the thing I'm chasing. Mm-hmm. Go to these other projects. You're like, yeah, like this is fun. I get a build, but this isn't like scratching this itch that I had back then. And then all of a sudden it feels like, the stars align, the glass slipper fits. And Chris is like, hey, like, do you want to come get that feeling again? And we can go do these projects together. And you're like, wait, where did you come from again?
Exactly.
Because what was his background? I mean, what was he doing before this?
So Chris's background, he is the director at Give Group. So Give Development, Give Communities. So they have a nonprofit and for-profit arm, and they're residential developers, mostly low-income housing developers. Cool. Mostly in Salt Lake City. They've done some work in Ogden and Provo as well. And then my background was mostly especially in recent years, more of like the townhomes, attached housing. So that's actually the two things the Perpetual Housing Fund does. So we do for sale housing, townhomes, and condos. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. And then we pair LIHTC and other subsidies with equity sharing. So
walk us through how, because it's pretty technical, but yes. We can get there, I think, of like how the Perpetual Housing Fund, like the actual fund, how it works and how it actually does give back to these lower income families and people.
Sure. So like I said, the first way is condos and townhomes. We take very little profit. You mentioned that there are no condos in Salt Lake. There aren't. And there's a few reasons for that. They're extremely hard to build for liability reasons. So if you go build a townhome or a single family home as a home builder, and something goes wrong in the first year, you have to fix it. But if something that's not an actual construction defect goes wrong after that first year, you're pretty much off the hook. So the risk is pretty small, and your subs are really carrying that risk after that. Same for the architect and the engineers involved. In a condo project, technically that 1 year goes up to 6 or more years. And HOAs, especially outside of Utah, attorneys will go and buy a condo in an HOA or go represent some condo owners in an HOA, and they will come after the developer. It's unfortunate, but it's making it almost impossible to develop condos unless they're really expensive. So what a developer has to do is go buy a WRAP policy, which is protecting the developer, the contractor, all the architects and engineers involved, the subcontractors involved, so that they're covered for all those years. And most insurance companies don't even want to do that anymore.
I was going to say, and then even like any insurance policy on top of that, that's going to cut into ROIs. So
exactly.
Or we can just roll out apartments.
That, and then also the tax ramifications of selling versus, so if you have an apartment, you can just 1031 if you want to sell an apartment building, then you get your cash flow, and then you can 1031 if you want to sell that whole apartment building. A condo or a townhome, you are building the project and then you're selling it immediately, and you're getting ordinary income taxed on everything.
Yeah, because because you have to sell everything as it is. It's a unit compared to
and it's not short-term or long-term capital gains. It's ordinary income tax.
Interesting.
So there's townhomes, that risk isn't there. You still have like the tax ramifications, but that's why you're seeing some townhomes being rented and some being sold. But condos are just like non-existent because apartments are the better option. So anyway, we are planning to take that risk. And really, it's less so the risk. It's just we're not making any money on it. So we're going to do condos and for sale townhomes. We have a really cool townhome project out in Guadalupe, in the Guadalupe neighborhood.
Because it's right on, because yours is on, is it 3rd West and 5th North? Or am I making that up?
4th West, 5th North.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. It's Project Open. So Project Open 2 is right there, and then this will be phase 3 of Project Open.
Okay.
And these are really cool townhomes. They are less than 14 feet wide and 40 feet in depth. So you have a single car garage in the back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to like visualize this in my head. Okay, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. And then you have so it's rear loaded. So your garage is in the back, and then your front door is in the front of that. So imagine your garage is like 20 feet, and then you have another 20 feet of like an entrance, flex room, bathroom. And then you go upstairs, and then you have this cool galley kitchen. So you have like stairs on one side and a cool galley kitchen with a room on the front and a living room on the other side.
Oh, interesting.
And then upstairs is another 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And then you can actually do a 4th floor with another 2 bedrooms. So you could have a 6-bedroom family home or a 4-bedroom family home on this little footprint. You can actually get like 40 units per acre. Which is like apartment density.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So we are putting that product there, and we are hoping to do, we're getting it ready so that we can do modular on future projects like that. This will be kind of a demonstration to show how cool they are. And the other thing that it's kind of showing is how form-based zoning, form-based code would be really helpful in the Valley, because we're going to have the exteriors look like they're 20 feet wide, typical towns. But really you have 2 units in there.
Yeah.
So rather than saying you can only have 20 units per acre or 10 units per acre, hopefully this will show cities and people that you can have really cool, like medium density, affordable, naturally affordable projects. Because even like a market rate developer could build these a lot more affordable than a typical townhome.
Totally. Because like the whole premise is that, because like if because I rent right now. So if I rent, I don't get any of that money back. It goes to my best friend and he pays his mortgage, and I don't have any ownership in the house unless he wants to give me some.
Yep.
But he's probably not going to.
The condos and townhomes I just talked about, they're going to be actual for sale units. We're going to just sell them like a normal unit. They will have a deed restriction on them. So they'll be affordable to the first owner. That owner can make reasonable gains, but it's going to stay affordable to future buyers of that home. Now, that's the more simple model that we do. And then...
So the first one is really just like a proof of concept of like, here's how we can make things denser. Here's how we can do things right. And then once we kind of nail like the actual concept itself, then we can layer in how we can provide more opportunities for lower income families, et cetera.
So that concept that I just talked about is really for people making like 60 to 80 plus percentage of area median income.
Cool.
So then we have another option for people making 60% and below. And that is pairing LIHTC with shared equity. So that's where we do a big multifamily project. So the 515 project is going to be our first one. It's the building on 515 East, 100 South. This one,
I actually used to work in that building once upon a time.
You did?
Yeah.
It's a cool building.
Dan Jones and Associates.
Oh, yeah.
It was my first job after my mission. I was answering calls with my friend Christian Brown. It was terrible. But yeah,
the views are great.
Oh, views are phenomenal.
The building is really cool. So we're doing an adaptive reuse in there. So about 100 units in the first phase.
Wow.
And then we'll have a second phase on where the existing parking structure is. So anyway, that project will be our first project, and it's a multifamily project. Most of our multifamily projects will be 200 plus units. And so we applied for low-income housing tax credits from the state. And what we will do is, so what that means is these tax credits allow a developer to develop a project and have lower rents. You have lower debt, which makes lower rents available. It enables you to have lower rents.
Yeah, because less cost of capital.
Exactly. So
see, I was a finance major too.
Yeah, I should remember my audience here. Anyway, so it's a typical multifamily project. light tech project. And then we are just giving back 75% of what would typically go to the developer. It's going to the residents. So that is your annual cash flow. 75% of that annual cash flow is after you've paid your debt, all of your expenses and your debt is going to the tenants as a rent rebate each year.
Oh, okay.
And then also the appreciation of the building. When we refinance, that's how developers make a lot of money as they go and refinance after a couple of years when interest rates fall, which may not be possible in the next couple of years in the current interest rate environment. But on these projects, maybe 10 or 15 years out, we'll go refinance and everyone that's lived there will get their piece of the pie of their 75%. So that is one negative of the program is that equity is locked up for a long time, but it is in any home, right? But we are going to create some kind of like a home equity vehicle so that if you have a qualifying event, like you want to go back to school or you have a medical emergency, you can access some of that or a down payment or even like an equity swap into one of our townhomes. We're going to make those things available so that people aren't paying like high interest debt on something like that when they actually do have equity in their quote unquote home.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the huge, like the biggest benefits of having like, I mean, a large, 401k or a large investment account, or any real asset is you can borrow against it. And so if you don't have one of those large assets, then to your point, go find your interest because that's the only way you're going to be borrowed that, which it will perpetuate so many other problems that we find in that low income class. But this really does give them a way to like, oh, I can borrow and go back to school. I can borrow and go put a down payment on a house compared to just feeling stuck and just paying this rent time after time and not being able to have any sort of exit.
Yeah. And in this first project, if you lived there the first 10 to 15 years, depending on when we refinance, we would expect someone living in that project, or how we have it pro forma right now, is we're expecting someone that lived in that project for 10 years to have almost $60,000 of equity at the end of that. So even if you lived there for 5 years, that's $30,000 potentially that's going into your pocket.
Compared to zero.
Exactly. And you're also getting a reasonable rent at 30% of your income.
Yeah. So, I feel like it's solving a lot of the issues that we have because, going back to when I lived in Seattle, that was a huge issue. It was affordable housing because, the median house in Seattle at the time was like $1 million. Everybody who had a family had to come in from the bus from like 30 minutes, an hour away. And then if you, if you're, low income, then you're coming even further. You have to go even farther. And it's, not reasonable, especially when they have other responsibilities, families, and other things to take care of.
The low-income housing tax credits, there is a cap per year that the state issues.
Is that always fixed, or is it based on like population growth? Like, how do they come with that number?
Some is coming from the federal level, some's coming from the state level. So the state does have a say in how much state tax credits they're going to allocate to.
Is that just part of like budgeting process?
I guess so. That's not my area of expertise.
If anybody knows, DMs are open.
Anyway, but the last several years, especially this year, it was so competitive to get those tax credits.
Is there anything like that changed inherently or just happened to be competitive?
Well, I think it's interest rates are going up. It's harder for market rate projects to pencil. And so you see developers wanting to get in to something that works financially. And also the need for it is so high. But also permanent supportive housing is in that bucket too. So when we start talking about homelessness and other issues the city and the state are facing, that's all coming from this same bucket. Permanent supportive housing and then housing that's helping people at 25 to 50% of AMI. So it's not like we could just go build more of it.
Right.
And Utah Housing Corp is very their allocation plan is already the projects that are doing permanent supportive housing and that are nonprofits and that are doing really reaching the furthest are getting the most points and getting built. So it's not like this is like a fix all. However, it is, hey, these tax credits are available and possibly other subsidies are available. And we think that we're using them to the most extent possible right now, which I think is a good start. People have asked before, like, is this the fix all? Like, no, nothing is the fix all. Like, this is going to take so many different ideas and people working together. But I do think it's leveraging something that is already working and leveraging it to the people who need it the most and who it was intended to help. And it's also, I think in the future, it's going to help either bring the need down or let that money go even further because you're getting people out of that perpetual cycle eventually.
And then, I mean, if you help them get out, then it replaces someone else. And I mean, the American dream, right? The American dream is the belief in upward mobility and not feeling trapped or not feeling like it's this gargantuan task to do. And I mean, if history repeats itself, I mean, housing and being a homeowner, I mean, we can even simplify it down more to like an equity owner, that provides a lot of opportunity for people. And as we see these trends of like, I mean, in some of the materials you sent me, I mean, in 2022, 12% of the houses that were sold were at a level that the median income could afford.
Exactly.
That's not sustainable.
No, it's not sustainable. That's what's so sad is like you grow up in Utah and you see that this is happening and you're like, what is Utah going to be in 10 years? And then it's even harder because like being in the development world, you go to so many like city council meetings or planning commissions and there's so many people that are like, oh, well, we don't want apartments here. We don't want this here. And it's just like this huge battle. And I think it's more of an internal battle for people because I think once you have a home or if your direct child or you directly are not dealing with this, I think you're like, oh, well, I'm fine. But like our kids and grandkids aren't going to get to live here unless we do something about it. And I don't think it's a lot of people are like, oh, it's just like a market thing. It'll work itself out. Like the numbers are showing differently. Like this is a crisis.
Totally. And especially when you do, I mean, I feel like there's so many kind of, I hate going back to Seattle, but like comparative geographies where, and unfortunately, I think Seattle is a great example because you have a geographically restricted city, very strong population growth, very strong economic growth, especially tied to technology, and you run out of space. Yep. And it's either you go up, you go down, or you go over. And same with Salt Lake. I mean, up to Davis County, you go down to Utah County. I mean, you can try to go up to Summit County. I mean, even in Tooele and Stansbury Park have been growing so much, but it's not all feasible, especially for this. I mean, the humdrum of the city and the economic vehicle that it needs to be. We can't have people commuting an hour and a half, 2 hours and try to think like that's going to solve everything.
Well, and Salt Lake City is doing a really good job and they are very forward thinking. And maybe it's because they are seeing, maybe they're the first to see how bad it really is. But then you get to some of the suburban communities and they're not aggressively doing affordable housing incentives or trying to increase density. Like there's a big gap in thought between the suburban areas and Salt Lake City. So even Salt Lake City, you see people against higher density and stuff, but that's nothing compared to when you're out trying to develop even townhomes or something in some of the suburban areas of the valley.
Oh, I'm sure neighbors in no time have their torches and pitchforks out saying, not in my neighborhood.
Yep.
But I mean, actually going back to that one point that you made about some people are like, is this the solve for everything? Is this going to be the one? It's like, no, like nothing ever is. Mm-hmm. But we have to be willing to take risks and move forward to like at least make meaningful change. Because if we just, let perfection be our biggest enemy, then we're never going to be able to actually find something that perfectly works. And then people are going to suffer and it's just not a solution. But if we can say, hey, listen, we can do something a little bit better. And then someone else is going to come along and make that a little bit better. That's the way these things are solved. And again, like when you're dealing with government money, elected officials, changing of laws, zoning, it takes time and you have to be patient because there's so much red tape in drawing everything through. So you have the project, the Guadalupe project, which is, when's that slated to be done?
We're hoping to break ground in a few months. So hopefully by the end of next year, maybe first quarter of the following year.
Cool. So first quarter next year. And then you have the 515 building that where you're doing, so it sounds like multi-phase, similar to the other one. You're going to do the 200 units to begin with and then start on the parking garage.
Our phase 1 is just under 100 units.
Okay,
and then we'll also have some other uses in the building, like community space, hopefully some nonprofit space. We're hoping to do like some kind of a coffee shop or restaurant from a local business.
Cool.
So that first phase is hopefully slated to start early second quarter of this year. And our contractor has said that we could get the first couple floors done in a few months. So ideally end of next summer, we could have someone moving in, which is so exciting.
That would be amazing. Because it was Intermountain most recently, right?
The University of Utah is leasing.
That's right. It was University of Utah.
In the building currently. Hopefully a year from now, we have people living in the buildings. The first rent rebate checks won't be out yet, but it'll be so exciting when the first people get to move in there.
So assuming the project in Guadalupe and 515 go well, I mean, what's after that or what's next?
We have a pretty aggressive pipeline. It's been so fun. And I think it's partly because of the crisis. And I think that it's really heartwarming to see how many people really care about this and care about really all like humanity issues. But we have a lot of impact oriented investors and other people that have come to the table that have said, how do we help? So we have quite an aggressive pipeline. We have a great team of investors that are coming to the table to help us. Ideally, we'll be throwing up 600-ish units a year, starting in Utah and then probably branching out to the Intermountain West. That's the goal, like the 5-year goal. Each project, especially the big projects, will take a year of concept and planning and entitlements and then another couple of years of construction. So that's a negative, is development takes a long time, but development does create a lot of equity that this wouldn't be as significant to the tenants and the residents living in these projects if we were just purchasing an existing building and turning it into this program. That there's a lot of equity gained in development that we're directly passing on to our residents. Yeah,
it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that, where, if you build something brand new, great development, great, almost like, community area, central area, like that's going to generate equity for them as well, compared to, like, to your point of just remodeling something else and just finding a place to put them there.
Which is not a bad thing either. I mean, any naturally affordable rentals is also extremely needed here.
And as you think about this growth and all these projects you have in the pipeline, I mean, what are some of the biggest headwinds that you guys are facing to acquiring these and getting these to go live?
Interest rates, like everyone. Interest rates, just timing. Development takes so much time. Entitlement processes take time. I honestly don't think we have as many headwinds. I feel like I should knock on wood saying that, but with so much community support, it's been so fun to see like everyone coming together. And I feel like we don't have that many headwinds because of what we're doing. And because if we can prove that these first 2 projects are really making a difference, then I think that we can get the financing we need at the interest rates we need. And, maybe one of the headwinds is just like that fixed amount of federal subsidy that's available. But even that, I feel like the political atmosphere is like starting to understand that housing is a big problem and are starting to make strides in that.
That's huge. I mean, if you don't have that many headwinds and the other things are things kind of outside of our general control, then, it sounds like it's getting received well. And as long as these, initial projects go well and does everything we say, it sounds like it could be a really good solution, not just for, Salt Lake, but in the Mountain West, but a lot of other geographies as well.
Yeah, we're really excited. We're excited that so many people have gotten on board and are helping us get this going.
No, I'm so glad that you get to have that feeling again from your first project of helping people and being able to build something at the same time.
Yeah. When the first like resident lights pop on at night in 515, I'll come back and tell you
Just tears streaming
how
down
excited
your face.
I am.
That's amazing. So I mean, outside of real estate development, taxing house credits, how do you like to spend your time? What keeps you in Utah?
The mountains, definitely, and just the proximity to. I mean, this area is so beautiful. 3 to 4 hours, you're camping, like in a place that looks like another world.
Totally.
There's so many cool places in Utah, and then even the flight distance to the West Coast, East Coast, everywhere. You're like right in the middle of everything. But definitely like the outdoors here, skiing, mountain biking, camping, like everything is right here. Hiking.
Snow's coming down. Where did you get a pass this year?
I didn't get a pass this year. We're expecting a baby in March.
Ooh, congrats.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So I took this year off, but I grew up, I actually grew up snowboarding, not skiing, in Park City. And then we went to Brighton, just like day passes the last few years.
Cool.
But we'll get our little boy on the mountain in a couple of years.
I mean, that's like the funnest way to go about it. Like I was talking to someone recently where, I mean, it's skiing's fun, don't get me wrong, but the way it is now, I know most of my best days are behind me, but like going with like my nieces and nephews where I'm like, oh my gosh, they like put it together. They can rip, they can follow me. I will show them how to jump off a cat track. And it's just so much, I mean, it's just a different kind of fun, I would say. At least you're taking a break this year where it's already not as good as last year.
Yeah.
My break was last year and it was a bad mistake, but I've learned.
Did you have an injury?
No, I just didn't want to deal, like, because I had one the year before and I was like, I don't want to wait in line anymore. The snow's not that, like, wasn't that great the year before.
Getting up the canyons is hard. I mean,
yeah.
It's almost like, oh, am I going to wake up to, it's like going to work a 6th and 7th day of the week.
Yeah, it's insulting, especially when I'm used to college where it's like, I mean, you went to the U, it's like, cool, I have class till 10:30 or noon, my skis are on my car, drive up the canyon, get off, go ski till I'm tired, come back, homework, school, whatever I need to do, and I'm done.
Yeah, high school, it was like 2 p.m., you're done with school, and you're going to go.
Do whatever you want to do.
Exactly.
I bit the bullet this year and got an Epic Pass, because I grew up skiing in Park City a ton. I mean, I was a huge park rat. And I was talking with my roommate. I was like, man, like there's just something about an icon. Like I love Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, grew up there. But like, again, the thought of going up every Saturday and Sunday, feeling like I have to get up so early, not having it worth it. I was like, you know what, let's see what this happens. Again, I could make another grave mistake and be kicking myself at the end of the year. But like, I never really explored the canyon side too much. I mean, the Park City side's super nostalgic for me. I like going up to Park City in general.
Yeah, I haven't spent a lot of time on the canyon side, but I'm going to go up there soon so I can relive my high school glory days.
There you go. And like the other one that actually was the episode that dropped today with Tanner Leonard, she was talking about how so Nordic Valley, $18 for a day pass.
Wait, where is Nordic Valley?
It's up by Snow Basin.
Oh, okay.
And so people always think it's just like Nordic skiing, like cross country skiing, but they like, I think it's like 6 or 8 lifts. Like it's like a real place.
I have heard that like everywhere Ogden area is kind of like the good old days here now. So I'm going to have to
just go up and just tears streaming down your face. Like, this is what it used to be. And I hate being the person that's like, you don't know what it was like when I was a kid. And I'm like, I am getting old if that's like the curmudgeon in me coming out of telling them little.
Isn't it nice sometimes though? Like I remember when like you would go somewhere and all the locals were like, well, if you're a local, like you missed like if you're not a local, you missed this, and now like you're the local, like in somewhere that's now cool.
Yeah, I finally got there, but here we are. So outside of skiing, you said you like to camp and go in the mountains a lot, mountain bike. I mean, any places you like to camp or any trails you prefer to go on the mountain bike? I know you live in Holiday, so probably Mill Creek and all around there's.
Yeah, I actually love the Draper Trail system for mountain biking, and then camping, San Rafael. Anywhere Moab. My favorite place to camp in Utah is Yonder. Have you been down to Yonder?
That is hilarious that you say that, because my best friend and roommate, Tanner too, is their head of special projects and construction.
Oh, really?
So he spent 90% of a month, 95% of the month at Yonder he got the job in like April, I think, and then they closed October 30th. So I went there, I mean, twice this summer to go hang out. So fun because it's like nice because like Yonder's like kind of in the middle of it all.
Yes.
And
it's like perfect glamping.
Yes.
Like you have this cool hangout place, you have a nice shower at night, but you're not like in like a luxury resort. Like, I don't know. It's so fun.
Totally. And they have like that little breakfast that you can go on your hikes, go around, go up to Torrey, go up to, go to the Great Basin. You can go everywhere. Like, cause it's so central. You just hop in your car and go, and then go get some dinner at Hell's Backbone.
Exactly.
And everybody wait. Like, it's so nice.
And Hell's Backbone hasn't been as busy. Hopefully that's probably not good for them, but when you're visiting, it's so nice to be able to go there without a reservation.
Oh, totally. Get some genchiladas.
Yes. I got their cookbook. It's like, I think you need to practice just in case you ever like want to get their cookbook and like make their mashed potatoes. It's not like, I think they made it so that you have to like practice a few times, or maybe it's just me, but you should get their cookbook, but it takes some. It's not like you just follow the recipe. It's like you have to experiment with it.
No, yeah, that's like that and Kiva Coffee are like my two favorite places. I always have to stop when I go down there. Like we went, we did a guys trip down there a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago actually. And it was so fun. We just sat there at Kiva and just looking. And it was so pretty because it was like beginning, middle of October. So leaves were changing, and it's so pretty right there where you have like Calf Creek going through, where you have the red rock, and then you have like the yellow leaves. And I can't remember the trail right now, but we went on this hike and it was just like yellow leaves, red rock, stream, and then my dogs just being assholes and running around and having the time of their life. But it's such a pretty place. Like, again, to your point of like, why is Utah so great? I mean, you can drive 3 or 4 hours and you're on Mars. You can hop on a plane 2.5 hours later, you're in Seattle, you're in San Francisco, and even if like, look geographically, like, are we in the middle of the US? No, but we're pretty close, especially for the benefits we get. It's a lot better than being in like Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah. Or I mean, even you're working from home one day and you go on like a 2-hour hike and you're up in the mountains and it's literally a 5-minute drive from your house to get to the trailhead.
Yeah. It's that's like one of my favorite things. Cause I told you where I live, but, over like where I guess on Strava, it's called the Mount Wire trailhead, but the trailhead by the zoo that goes on like shoreline, like that is like, I'll be like, cool, 30 minutes. I can go to a mile, maybe 2. I can be a little late to the meeting if I need to. And it's like so accessible.
Yep.
Where like when I lived in Seattle, for example, so I only went skiing there once, and it was funny because they're like, oh, like we're going to go skiing this Saturday. And I knew I was leaving. And so I was like, yep, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And like, cool, be at our place at 5. And I was like, that's early. Like, yeah, it's a 2.5 hour drive. It's like, oh, that's right, we're not in Utah. And again, like that accessibility is unmatched. I mean, any comparable place, even like Denver and Colorado, like you have to work for all of it. And here it's
all right here.
Yeah, it could be a $10 Uber.
It's a 2-hour drive. Do you spend a lot of time in Bear Lake?
That's one place that every summer I'll see someone post something. I'm like, why don't I go to Bear Lake? Because I went for scout camp like every year when I'm like from between 12 and 16, and it was fun. But I'm like, wait a minute, that's actually like pretty solid place to spend some time, especially if you want to go get some, go get a shake. Is it blackberry shake or blueberry or raspberry? Raspberry. Yeah. The Bear Lake raspberries. Oof.
Yeah. My family had a place up there when I was growing up. So I spent every summer up there, like water skiing and, fishing. Bear Lake has my heart. It's like almost like an ocean in the perfect weather in the summer.
Yeah.
When it's like 100 degrees here, it's like a perfect 78 there all summer long.
Totally. Especially when it's like, oh, I could go up north or it's 78 at Bear Lake, or we can go south where it's like 100. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Lake Powell, but I'm like,
but in like the fall and spring, going down to St. George, it's perfect.
Big shoulder season guy. Because I'm golf fanatic, and springs and falls can't take me away. It
would be really nice to live in St. George for the like 3 months in the winter. That'd be perfect.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. There's got to be something. We got to make some. We got to do some projects down there, and we can find enough reasons to go down there.
Yep, exactly.
Well, cool, Ashley. Well, wrap it up with the 2 questions I always ask everybody. Number 1, if you could have someone on the Small Lake City podcast, who would you want to hear their story or what they're up to?
Oh my gosh, just choosing one?
I mean, you don't have to choose one. You can fire away.
Well, what's the second question?
Second question is, if people want to find out more about you, the Perpetual Housing Fund, the projects you're working on, what's the best way to find you or information on that?
Perpetualhousing.org. My email is ashley@perpetualhousing.org. Go check out our website. There is a subscribe list so that you can get on that list and be apprised of all of the projects we're working on. So if you're interested in buying or living in one of our projects, then that's the place that you'll hear the news first. I'm trying to think of who I would have on here. I love the Mile High Food Fairies Instagram page.
Okay.
I take her questions a lot.
Okay.
I don't know if this is like who I would have, like as my choice, but Salt Lake City would be a fun one.
Salt Lake City. Okay.
Because then you could get all of the. I am a foodie. I feel like you should get the owner of Yonder, the founder of Yonder. That would be a good one. 2 hours from now, I'll text you and be like, "This is who you should have."
It's okay. I'll have AI generate your voice. Be like, okay, just make sure Ashley says this. No, yeah, founder of Yonder, because I think it's cool to hear just like about how just like a lot of our public lands are getting invested into so that we can enjoy them more. Because your point, like to your exact point, it's the perfect amount of glamping where I have just what I need, nothing else, and I'm fine. So cool. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. And then hopefully they'll add a few more places around Utah. That would be nice.
Actually Zion's coming up.
Oh, really?
Joshua Tree, Smoky Mountains.
Cool. See, I like that setup so much better than like auto camp.
Yeah. If I could have it my way, I would have a van or RV, ideally the exact same one I had when I did van life, but sold it. The Yonder setup's perfect. I'm like, cool. I have a bed. I have AC. I have Wi-Fi, electricity, a shower. Don't need to have it right next to me. Bathroom. Don't need to have it right next to me. There's a kitchen. There's like communal space. Like it's all you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll text you.
Deal. No worries. Well, thank you so much, Ashley.
Decide. Okay. Thank you.
No, so stoked for all the projects. Follow Perpetual Housing. If you have any impact on interest rates, let's bring those down. If you feel so generous, make a donation to the Perpetual Housing Fund and let's get some lower income housing in Salt Lake City. So thanks
for having me.
Thank you, Ashley. We'll see ya.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Salt Lake City Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, review, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And we'll catch you next week. We'll see you there.